You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Shopify grows your business no matter how far or big you grow. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. Whether you're selling your fans' next favorite shirt or an exclusive piece of podcast merch, Shopify helps you sell everywhere. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S. Allbirds, Rothy's, Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. Because businesses that grow, grow with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today, I am talking to Derek Kimball from Kimball Hardwoods. He's kind of like a secret man behind the scenes. He has almost certainly supplied your favorite builder with some wood at some point. At the very least, I'm sure you have seen a guitar made with wood that came from Derek's shop from way out east over there in Rhode Island. A lot of listeners have actually asked me to get Derek on the show. You know who you are. A lot of you have sent messages requesting this, and a few of my builder friends have suggested it as well. So I reached out on the old Instagram and got Derek on the show. We were going to actually do some in-person stuff surrounding a discovery he made up just north of me in the Olympic Peninsula. But unfortunately, things colluded to make that not happen, so we're going to have to catch him next time for that visual content. However, he did agree to come on the podcast and talk about his discovery and what it might mean going forward for one of the most popular hardwoods used in guitar making in the entire world. All right, is that enough of an intro? I feel like that's enough of an intro. All right, let's get into it. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the TONEWOOD podcast, the show about guitar stuff, occasionally, sometimes. And I'm your host, Blake Weiland. I had to think about that for a second. Who am I? I'm your host, Blake Weiland. With me today, I have Derek Kimball from Kimball Hardwoods. And this is going to be a different episode, I think. You have a perspective on this industry that I think is probably unlike just about anybody else. So why don't we start with how did you get into guitar? And then specifically, how did you get into supplying wood for guitars? This is not something I've ever talked about before.
Cool. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, and I'm honored. So, yeah, it's a long story that I'll have to make short. Well, let's see, guitar. So that was all me. Buddies I hung out with in the 80s and early 90s. We were all big into music and all that. And then I remember it. I got grounded for something, and my buddy down the street had this. I don't even think they make them anymore. It was called a Terminator guitar. So what it was a guitar with a built-in amplifier speaker actually in the solid body electric
I've
guitar.
seen that, yeah.
And I remember it because I grounded for a month. It was in the summertime too, so it was like the worst time ever to get grounded. And he came over. He's like, "Man, I got just a thing for you." And I was like, "Dude, and you get me off of it, being grounded for a month. Then if you can't do that, you got nothing for me." He goes, "No, wait." So he brings me over the guitar, and I'm like, "Wow, it's cool, man." He's like, "I don't know how to play," and he showed me a few chords, and that was it. And so that was I'm dating myself now, 93.
Okay.
93, 94. And it just took off. And I'm a big music guy. So from there, it just grew. And then I got really good at it. I spent a lot of my life playing the instrument in bands locally. And that was basically, I had started doing I was big into blues and then into metal. And I have my, inspirations went anywhere from Jimi Hendrix and then I got into the guitar virtuoso section with the Steve Vais and the Joe Satrianis and all that. And then I got to the point where I could play like that, not as good as them, but I had some pretty good chops. And so I just stuck with it. I've been a music guy ever since. And as far as the wood industry, that one's a bit more complicated because my father's family immigrated from Italy over to the United States. They were all stonemasons.
Okay.
But my great uncle Eddie was the first to break away from the family tradition, and he was a carpenter. But his life was cut short in a motorcycle accident. And so some time had gone by. And then ultimately, my father, I don't know all the particulars, but somehow he inherited my uncle's chisels and all that stuff. And my father had shown an interest in woodworking back in the early 70s.
Okay.
And it took off. He is to this very day a master woodworker. I learned virtually everything from him. And actually, at one point, I think I was 17 or 18. We thought about going into business together, but I was too much of a punk, and he was still, we would go at each other over. It just wouldn't work. The timing wasn't right. I was too immature, and he was still too hoorah, So I actually went into food service, is where I got my business background. Ultimately, ended up in sales. Still play guitar, still big into music, still in bands. And I would, I learned, I grew up in it. So my dad was a general contractor, a carpenter. He did everything. So I grew up in a wood shop. We were always on the job site. So I saw a lot of stuff, watched him do a lot of stuff because it was really him. But I was around it, always around it. And then had a great career in food service, made good money. But was getting towards, it was about 20 years, and I got to the point where I had enough, and I had made good money, and I had always wanted to do my own business, but I wanted to incorporate my family. And I'll never forget the night I made the decision, because for 2 years, I stayed in food service and did the wood business to be sure that it would work.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, it was, if you could, I had two little girls in diapers. I was doing, oh man, I don't even know the number of hours I was doing just I'm one of those guys. I'm very passionate. And when I go for it, it's 120%. There's nothing less. And, it was a wild 2 years, but we ended up making it work. That traditional story where I started off literally started in my basement. And that was the slogan. We got to get out of the basement. And I made the decision, if I wasn't able to get out of the basement, then it wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
But a lot of support. My father's a woodworker to this day. He works with me. Obviously other employees. It's not a blur. It's just, I haven't slept much. And I went to work and I never stopped. I'm still doing it, but we've changed so many times. New factory, rented and broke down the walls for 7 different units and just expanded and expanded and expanded. And it's just really a testament to the people I have around me, the Lord. I mean, my passion. That's the key to this, is that when I had first got into the business, I noticed that there weren't many that did it. And the few that I kind of, I guess you could call it mentorship, but they were very crotchety. They're very miserable. And I understand now why, because they let the stresses and the pressures and all those things get to them where it robbed them of their passion. And so that was one of the things that I had to up front. I was like, if it robs me of my passion, I'm out. And,
there's no reason to keep on doing it when you're miserable. You can go be miserable and not have all this responsibility.
Right. Yeah. Well, and the thing is, we all have families. So you add all the personal element and everything else you got going on. And then as you get bigger, you hire people. Now you got to deal with those challenges. And wow, at the end of the day, you're like, okay, I think that I made the right call. I'm still very passionate about this business. I still get just as excited seeing an amazing figured tree now as I did 9 years ago. And that's about when I started.
Yeah.
And it got real serious about 7 years ago. And then we just haven't looked back. So, but I still have amazing guitar collections. Unfortunately, one of the things that I'm probably bummed out about throughout this is I'm so busy that I don't get to play as much as I used to, and it really bums me out. But I have $100,000 custom guitar collection from
Hey.
custom builders all over. So when I make the decision to actually start playing again, I have quite the setup.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes. Yeah, that's a tale old as time. There's so many people that get into the guitar industry or the music industry because they love it, and they love pretty much everybody. There's very, very few people that I've met that don't have a musical background that get into this.
yeah,
Weirdly, I have met a couple. I met a finance guy the other day, and I was like, "You don't play anything?" He's like, "Nope." I'm like, "Well, you should be in a different industry."
yeah,
But
exactly. Right. Yeah, right.
but that aside, it's weird how much it happens. You get into it because you love the instrument, and then you end up not playing nearly as much. Now, I'm pretty lucky in that part of my job is playing, so I
Yeah,
do get to play more than some of my friends.
yeah.
But it's happened. I can't believe how many people I've talked to at this point. They're like, I love the guitar, don't get to play it much these days because I'm
I
too
know.
busy working on the business.
Yeah,
It's a tale old as time, unfortunately.
yeah. No, it's all too familiar. And
Hmm.
the thing is, time flies. I just turned 44, and it's like, wow, how'd we get here that fast? Okay.
Hmm.
So, and if I'm not careful, I'll be 64 saying the same thing. So I've made a commitment that in the next couple years, I'm going to not work 90 hours a week. Probably gonna
Cut it
shut
all the
down
way down to 70.
yeah. Well, you know what though? I told my wife, told my family, I mean, I'm an early riser. So getting up at 3 in the morning is not a big deal for me. I can get a lot done in normal business hours before and after. But I'll probably take Sundays off in the future. That's really be my day to just relax. Because at some point, you just can't do it indefinitely. At some
Hmm.
point, something gives.
Yeah, 100%. I super related to what you were talking about when you made the decision to go, and then for the next few years you did both. I
Yeah.
did the exact same thing. It
Yep.
was about 3 years for me doing my full-time job in the oil industry, trying to get this podcast off the ground, the strings, and I was doing consulting work at the same time,
Oh,
trying to
yeah.
do all that at the same time. I finally literally got to I probably quit a little bit early.
Yep.
Honestly, it would have been
Yeah.
probably a little smoother if I could have just held out. But I was 3 years of burning the candle at four different ends, and I
Yep.
physically just was like, I cannot do this anymore. I'm
Yeah.
wiped. And
Yeah, well, for me,
yeah.
it was same thing. We were getting to that point where it was basically affecting my. I had two little ones and diapers and all that, and a wife who
Hmm.
needed some help, who also had a job, and was doing a lot of the stuff, and she could see it. She was like, "What are we doing?" And I was like, "I want." She's like, "What do you want to do?" And she knew the answer. She knew I
Hmm.
wanted to do wood. That's where my heart was. And I, to her credit, she said to me, she goes, "I just need to know one thing. Will we be okay?" And I was honest. I said, "Yeah, we'll be okay, but it's going to look different,
Hmm.
for the first 4 or 5 years."
Yep.
And she goes, "Okay, go."
Wow, it's like we are living parallel lives. That's exactly what my wife said too. What her specific request was, will I still be able to go to Costco? I'm like,
Right.
I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you can probably still go to Costco, but yeah, things
Yeah.
are going to look different for a
Yeah.
little while.
Not much more, but yes, you can.
Yes, yeah, don't go anywhere else after
Yeah. Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all you got to do is look at the statistics of startup businesses, and I forget what the percentage is. It's astronomically high. I think it's like 85% of businesses fail because you can't just start a business, put your feet up on the desk, and expect the money to flow in. It's just you gotta. In the beginning, you are the CFO, you are the owner, you are the guy working it, you are the or gal. It doesn't matter, and that's really where it's difficult. I really am grateful for my business background in food service, where I saw every walk of life. We were
Hmm.
responsible for handling money. There was a lot of aspects that really came into play in the wood business that I was prepared for. And for those that may not know, the food industry is very stressful. So I had, I was used to dealing with high stress situations. So, I was able to, it wasn't easy in the wood business. It didn't make it easy, but I knew how to react, respond, and how to get through it.
What side of the
So
food service industry did you work in?
Yeah, so I started in a warehouse, so on the distribution side. So
Okay.
I worked, well, had worked years ago in kitchens and all that. I was never a gourmet chef. I was a line cook, just basic stuff. And then from there, in the late '90s, I ended up in wholesale distribution where I worked in the warehouse. I loaded trucks at night. And then I was from there. I had asked the owner, I said, listen, I want to be a salesman. And, at the time I was 22, I think I was. And so instead of him laughing at my idea because I was, young, he said, tell you what, if you excel at all the jobs I give you in 3 years, I'll make you a salesman. So that was it. That's all I needed to hear. So I started up at nights, became the best picker. They put me on the days for receiving. And then from there, they put me in they had a retail outlet. So I was dealing with the public. And then I went on the road as a truck driver. And to his credit, 3 years to the day, he came to me. I'll never forget. He goes, "You ready?" I said, "Absolutely." And that's when I became a salesman, somewhere around 2003. And I ended up becoming their top sales guy within 5 years. And it was a challenge, though, because all the other sales folks were 20, 25 years older than me. I was a baby compared to them. And I had to prove myself. So it was hard work. It was long hours. It was thousands of miles of travel, but I loved every aspect of it because I got to deal with, I mean, everything, stressful, complicated situations, scenarios where they were going to hold orders because customers wouldn't pay. So you had to reach people, there was so many different things that I had to do. And I think that if it wasn't for that, it would have been much more difficult, getting into the wood business.
So specifically with the wood, did you start saying, I want to supply guitar makers, or did you start with a different portion of it?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I can tell you so this all wraps into it. The night it was on a Thursday night. It was at 11 o'clock. I was in food service. I was doing nothing with wood. Again, grew up in it, would cut trees on my grandfather's property. So just a stress relief. And I had it with food service. And the next morning we had a meeting in Boston. And I was like, man, I wish I had a business that I could incorporate my entire family. And I started thinking about it for a second. And I started to, feel the stress. And I was like, I just got to get back to playing guitar. At least when I played like 15, 30 minutes a day, it was a big, and before I could finish the thought, another thought came into my mind. I said, guitar. That's right. A lot of the guitars I own had that fancy wood. I'm like, I wonder, my dad's a woodworker. I know woodworking. My wife's in marketing. I'm in sales. You know what? I'm going to do my research. That was it. That next day, I started doing research and I just couldn't get enough. It was like a drug. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. What is this wood? Where's this come from? How do you find this? And, the research aspect is the easy part. It sparks the fire. Finding out how to locate the product, meet the people, network with people, physically cut the trees. When you don't have the machinery, you don't have the space, you have everything going against you. And the idea was to persevere through it and think big, but be realistic. So that was really what it was. That idea sparked it. I did the research and I just went full afterburner on it. I did not stop and I just couldn't get enough. And I was just absolutely amazed about the whole figured wood. I realized most people have no idea about the figured wood industry. It really is niche.
I barely know anything about it, and I obviously know a lot about the guitar world. So that's why I wanted to get you on.
Well, I played them for years, and I looked. I go, "Wow, that's really beautiful." But my thought process really didn't go much further than that.
Exactly.
So I guess I was like everybody else. And I mean, I had the Eddie Van Halen Music Man with a crazy quilt top on. I was like, it's pretty. That was the term. That's to this day, people I still deal with, like my dad, and I was like, that's pretty. It's like, okay, no, that's 5A master grade. And sometimes you lose people when you get too deep. but the idea is the passion is behind it all. And I just couldn't get enough. And then what I realized was this is really what hooked me was at the time, I realized that the industry was controlled by a lot of older men who were resistant to the internet, who wanted to put minimal effort into selling their products, they'd take a photograph of something they found 30 years ago, and they're like, trust me, it looks like it. We'll just send it to you. And I started reading these forums and people were getting really pissed. They were looking at stuff, they going, it looks nothing like what he said it was. It showed up in a newspaper. It looks like a Tyrannosaurus took a bite out of it. I don't know what this guy did. And it was common. I was like, no, it can't be like this. It was.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I realized that there was a vacuum, a void in the industry for someone who was fairly tech savvy, someone who could communicate. Remember, in this time, translation software started to get much better. Like a lot of things started to culminate at the same time. And again, it's a niche market. They're not too, you have guys who spent 30, 40, 50 years of their life getting to the top. I give them a lot of credit because back then that was word of mouth. That was newspapers. That was magazines. That was not the internet. That was not. So kudos to those guys. But what happened was they got tired. They got greedy and a lot of things happened. And I saw an opportunity. And so I went for it. And it was the right call because there was a lot of that going on. Not everyone, but there was a lot. And I guess my business model was this. I looked at it like the old adage, treat someone like you want to be treated. I wanted, if I bought, and some of the stuff is not cheap. You can spend $200 on a single top. It's just a lamination. You still need the bodyboard. You need the neck blank. You need the fingerboard. You need the hardware. You need all these things. And before you know it, as a builder or even a buyer, you're into this thing for thousands of dollars.
In just
and
wood.
That's not finished. That's not right. So I thought of it like, why don't people care about the way they send products out? Why don't they? It's like almost like got your money, got you, thanks. And it's like no, that's not okay. So to this day, I still have standards that we will not budge. The way we package, the way we market it, it's actual photographs of the products that you receive. The packaging is very expensive, but it's okay because I get maybe 2 or 3 returns a year.
There you
That's
go.
15,000 orders and items, and that's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, and it's not an arrogant statement. It's just that we go the extra mile, is what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, it kind of makes some sense, right? Even in the the guitar like pedal market, which is something I'm really familiar with, that most people, there's kind of a way that you package a pedal now that so it arrives safely. And there once in a while somebody doesn't do that, and usually they're durable enough that it doesn't matter. But still, there's like kind of a standardized format. But when somebody goes above and beyond that, which some people do, people notice.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing I noticed about the pedal market is I'm so removed. I go back to the Boss days, Stomp Box, and all that stuff, and I look at stuff now, and I'm like, holy crap! Some of these pedals are very expensive. I'm just kind of out of touch. So to your point, you spend $600,000, $700,000, $800,000, $900,000. You want it to show up in good shape, right?
You expect certain things, right?
Yeah. You don't deserve it.
Yeah, you do. I mean, well, they're the biggest company in the world, but like, you don't buy an Apple computer and have it show up wrapped in newspaper.
Right.
It shows up in like some of the best packaging you've ever seen, right?
Right.
And it's because you're spending money on a premium product. It's not just the presentation, although that's important too, but it needs to arrive safely as to the degree that it's possible.
I think one of the things that always stuck with me that I had learned in food service was quality always won. Quality always won. There's always somebody looking for a deal. I understand it. But quality always wins. But along with that quality comes you got to provide the service, and in this case, packaging and the overall. You can't just take somebody's money and forget about them.
Right. Well, yeah. So. That's unfortunately that part is fairly common in the guitar market, and I think it's. I actually don't necessarily put the blame 100% on even I know it's their fault, but I think, like we were talking about earlier, people get into this business because they love music and they love guitar. And so many people accidentally find themselves with a business, which sounds crazy for somebody like you or me that was very intentional about it. But a lot of people have accidentally found themselves with a business, and they're like, I just wanted to make guitars, or I didn't want to learn how to do accounting. I didn't want to learn all this other stuff. I just wanted to make guitars.
Right.
And so those are the people, oftentimes, if they don't get serious about it, that do fall behind. All of a sudden, it's been 6 months since you heard from them, and hey, I gave you a deposit on this guitar. Where's it at? Yada, yada.
Oh, there's a lot of that right now in the industry. I, for the sake of not naming names, as of late, I have heard, because remember, I'm dealing with thousands. I have 4,000 returning customers on a yearly basis. Oh, some of the stuff that's going on, I just kind of shocked. I was like, wow, okay. I didn't realize to what degree that was taking place and how much time transpires and money changed hands, but yet there's no progress. And it's like, whoa.
It's fortunately like not. I've never gotten fully stiffed on something, but I've definitely been through that before.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating as a customer. You're like, I spent quite a bit of money on this, and I did it with the intention of supporting a smaller company.
Right.
I did it because I wanted to support this side of the industry, and here I am wishing I would have went with an ESP or something.
Yeah. Well, so to your point, I will say this. I do understand the challenges of small business, and it's tough to tell people no.
Right.
But if you're in over your head, meaning that it's great to get the opportunity, but you have to be careful, because if you never say no, and all of a sudden you all you really can produce is 5 good instruments a year, and you've got orders for 20, maybe it's time to let people know that. And especially if you start taking people's money for deposits and all that, you want to be just straight up front with everyone. I mean, realistically, it's an open dialogue, and it's just being honest with people. And it's tough to turn money away. It's just, that's a human nature, right? You want this to work, but this day and age, everything's so expensive. So you have to be careful. You start taking people's money, you have to deliver on that promise. That's all I have to say about that.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Vincent, and I'm here to talk about the Merit Mercury X. My dad's always going on and on about how cool Maris is. He really went off on one about the Mercury X the other day. He said something about a 4,800 hertz sample rate and 99 preset locations and 33 banks, and something along the lines of the most advanced reverb pedal ever devised by man? That's all true, but I only care about one thing. This pedal sounds sick. So make sure you check out the Mercury X and all the other fine products at maris.us, as well as fine retailers worldwide. All right, Dad, now can I have my Pocky?
How exactly do artists get their music on Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, Tidal, all these services? How in the world do you get your music there? Well, in the past, you had to use something called a record label. But these days, you can use DistroKid. DistroKid is the absolute easiest way to get your music up on streaming services, and it's the most affordable way to do so. Not only do plans start at $22.99 for the entire year, that's less than $2 a month, DistroKid also does not take a cut of your streaming revenue, unlike some other services out there. Even better if you sign up by going to tonemob.com/distrokid. That's tonemob.com/distrokid. One more time, that's tonemob.com/distrokid. You'll get 30% off. That's right, 30% off their already extremely reasonable prices. So go to tonemob.com/distrokid and get your music out there. We are brought to you today by Sweetwater, specifically the Gear Exchange. You may have heard about this. This is a place where you can go to buy and sell your used gear. Maybe you got a pedal over there that's just kind of collecting dust. Maybe there's something you've been eyeing from the Sweetwater catalog. Well, right now is a great time to turn that unused gear into something you're actually going to use. Even better, if you sell on the Gear Exchange, you can keep 100% of the sale as long as you choose a Sweetwater gift card as your payout method. That is not too shabby, because let's be honest, most of this buying and selling we do is just to fund new gear purchases, and that is a great way to reach a wide variety of customers and keep 100% in your pocket, or rather on your pedal board. So go check out the Sweetwater Gear Exchange and turn that unused gear into something that's actually going to help you write that next huge riff. Oh, and I think a huge amount of leeway is given with communication. And that's the other side. That's the part I don't actually understand. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt with, like, they're not intentionally, most of them aren't intentionally taking money with no intent to deliver. They just, it happens because they don't know what they're doing on the business side oftentimes.
Right.
But what's unforgivable to me in this day and age is when somebody's like, "Oh, I haven't heard from the guy in 6 months," and it's that's
6
not okay.
months. How about 2 years? I've heard
2 years.
So many stories, and it's like zero communication in 2 years. No,
that's unacceptable.
Sorry.
Yeah,
that's not okay.
No, it's if you don't have their money, you don't owe them anything. But if you have $1 of theirs, you owe them some information, I think.
Yeah, and I understand from the builders. So now let me flip that coin around a little bit. If you're a builder and you're building, you do need to take a deposit. You want to make sure the customer has a vested interest. There's nothing worse than spending hours and hours and hours on a custom build only to have someone back out on you.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Other than a legitimate reason. And those do happen. There's a death in the family, someone fell on hard financial times. Makes sense. But you do want somebody to have a vested interest, but that doesn't mean the full price of the guitar.
No.
It means literally a deposit, and so that's where there's a trade for sure.
So segueing into something that's maybe a little more what people would be tuning in for this particular episode. Sure. And I know I'm you're the perfect guy to talk to about this.
Okay.
But it's also very controversial.
Yeah.
TONEWOOD, quote unquote. TONEWOOD. Yes. What is your take on the TONEWOOD debate? And then I'll give you what mine is as a non-wood person. So
you're talking you want to talk about specific woods, or you want me to just give a generalization?
Kind of like, so a lot, probably more of a generalization, because a lot of people will say it doesn't matter. And some people think it matters a lot more than maybe it does. So what's your take on it?
Yeah, so tone is the parent term. But this amazing day and age, after 70-ish years of learning how not to do things, we've learned a lot what encompasses tone. So I'll speak to the wood aspect of it, and obviously I'm sure you've touched on the whole pickups and the strings you use, to the fret wire, to everything, to the truss rods, to the everything, the transference of sound and vibration, the way it's picked up, received, and then all plays a role. Absolutely everything. But as far as wood is concerned, for sure, there is a difference. All right, so let's rewind the clock back to the Leo Fender days and the Les Paul Gibson days, the Gilded Age of what became the Guitar Wars. I wish I lived in that time. That if you go back and look in the late 40s, early 50s, and you look at people with white shirts and ties and prim proper, and you've got Elvis Presley coming out in the mid 50s, and it was like outer space. Leo Fender and Gibbs, they were so far ahead of their time. And but one of the many things that Leo Fender understood was, other than the balance of a guitar, which turns out to be very difficult to achieve, he understood tonality, and he understood the aesthetic aspect of it, the whole package. It's got to feel right, it's got to look right, and it's got to sound awesome. Those are not synonymous. Like, those generally don't come together very easily. You have to make it happen. So he chose Swamp Ash, and I think some years there was Alder for sure, which is definitely that brighter. It's for sure. On wood, you have, if you hold it, there are called nodal points that you can literally tap it, and you can hear sound / vibration through your hand and your arm. Those are, for whatever reason, generally very ugly woods. They just are.
Interesting.
They're just Swamp Ash. I mean, it's cool. Listen, I can drink some of the Kool-Aid and say, oh, the grain's pretty, it's cool. But if I show you a piece of 5A grade quilted maple next to you, go, oh, I have to have that. You won't even think twice, right? Conversely, that quilted maple is tonally dead. So out of the 133 maples in America, 13 of them are true domestics. Of those 13, the original settlers came here. Only 3 are used in the guitar industry, 2 in the Northeast and 1 in the Pacific Northwest. So that quilted maple from the Pacific Northwest, gorgeous. Not very good with tone.
Mm-hmm.
So swamp ash, you have alder. Okay, so for domestic American woods, some people use pine. It's more geared towards lightweight sound, workability, not as good. What else am I missing? Swamp ash. Yeah, and then you get into some African woods and South American woods. So Honduran mahoganies, African mahogany, a black limba. We just took a load in a black limba. Amazing sound. It's got that punch. It's got bright but a punch to it. I don't know how to explain that more, but for sure those woods sound amazing when you tap them. So in turn, that tone is transferred through the pickups, through vibration, right? The way you strum it, the way you hold it, the pickups you use, the strings, you put that all together and all of a sudden it transfers. But tone doesn't stop there. Tone travels through the wood. It's the finish you put on guitars. You put too heavy of a finish on guitars and it dulls or mutes the tone or transference of the sound. That's why when you see people like, God rest his soul, SRV, Stevie Ray Vaughan, it wasn't deliberate. He just beat the crap out of his guitar and there was no finish left. It sounded amazing. So in addition to the tube amps he used and the cry and all the Vox, all that stuff he used, he had an added benefit of having raw wood exposed when he played, which helped his tone. And here we are now relicking guitars where someone takes a chain and beats the crap out of the body blanks, exposing it. They sound better. Why? Because there's not as much finish on it. It's allowed to transfer that tone, that sound. So there is a difference. We do sell figured body blanks, but I always tell people, one, they're expensive, two, they're rare, but three, if your main focus is tone, these aren't for you. Because they're too bright, or what will happen is they'll mute, right? You won't have that resonance, that sustain that everyone's looking for. You know what I mean? You may not have that depth that everyone wants, where you're going to get that from a poplar, from a swamp ash, from an alder, from a black limba, from an African mahogany, from a sapele. You know what I mean? From Honduran mahogany. Just the list goes on and on and on. But those woods, some of them can be beautiful, but, so back to the Leo Fender thing, but we now here in the 21st century, you can have everything you want. You can have the great sounding body blank, but let's veneer the top of it so it looks good. But let's have all the pickups. Let's have everything. I can do double carbon fiber rods and I can do all these things. And then amplification, a whole other segment. It's like, before you know it. Let's see, but back in the 50s, the 60s, and 70s, people were figuring this stuff out.
Right.
The days of Eddie Van Halen when he was melting tubes in his Marshall, and people didn't realize he didn't use a distortion pedal, dude. He was figuring out all this stuff that nobody knew. So, same thing. Right hand, left hand, hammer on, an extension of his left hand. But nobody thought to do that stuff. Oh, at least not to the level that he did. So, but we live in exciting times where there's now a lot of known data. What works, what doesn't, what you should stay away from. Is there more revolutionary stuff out there? Yes, but it's far less. And is there another Eddie Van Halen out there? Probably. Is there another Eric Johnson, Texas Tone God out there? Sure. We just, we've had a lot happen in the last 30-ish years, 40 years, and we've learned a lot. So
yeah. Well, one of the things I've always stood by is I think everything matters. Like the whole thing changes. We've all experienced this. No, even people who are kind of anti-TONEWOOD, they don't think it's a real thing. Everybody has experienced going into a store and picking up a guitar, thinking that looks cool, playing it, being like, that's not for me. And they pick up a different one, maybe an identical model from the same brand or builder. This is the one. Well, sometimes they're even exact same specs. So what's different? Well, the one thing that can be different between the two exact models with the exact same specs and the exact same hardware and all yada yada is the wood.
Yep.
Right? They're two, even if they're the same species, wood's an organic material, right? It's two different pieces, maybe even off the same tree.
But not to cut you off, but you're 100% correct. I can tell you this for a fact from cutting trees. I have literally cut trees where not just in the tree, in the board in the tree, at the bottom end of the tree, the wood density is half of what the wood is further up, 30 foot up the tree.
Mm-hmm.
So it varies. So when we cut, okay, African Tonewoods just came in, Black Limbo. When we cut these, a lot of people want what's called a true book match. But if this wood's coming over on a container, which this does from Africa, the wood's not loaded that way. So we don't have that luxury. I have to cut consecutive cuts in the board to match grain as a slip match and try to match the best of our ability, the weight and density. But even sometimes you sit there, you go, this is the next 2 feet. Okay. Like I've literally rejected stuff because I'm like, it's not going to work, man. They're going to have a top heavy piece. And I'll literally take that. We actually have a palette where I call them odd because it's like, it doesn't resemble anything else in the board, you know? And I don't want to do that to a gal who's playing. You buy this and all of a sudden they're playing it and your guitar's leaning forward on your straps and you're like, what the heck? And it's like, and it wasn't that, listen, I didn't make the tree, right?
Right.
So I just, but I'm smart enough to know that that's not going to work. You know what I mean? And so, but the whole tone debate, tone is very much real. And the way that frequency and sound transfers throughout that, remember, that's the core of the system is that body blank. That's where there's a convergence, right? And so, yeah, it matters. If I give you there's no question about it. If I gave you a Black Limbo body blank and I gave you a solid core maple blank, same electronics, same neck blank, same amplification, everything, you would hear the difference. And let me tell you a story. Now I'm definitely dating myself. Oh, probably closer to 30 years ago. There was a place in the Northeast called Daddy's Junkie Music.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
They're not around anymore, I don't think. But I frequent that place all the time. You know, back when we were broke, we were like, when they actually sold really nice guitars, like on top shelf.
Oh, yeah.
And so we'd go down there on a Saturday, we'd jam out and all that. And I'll never forget this. I became very friendly with this manager. His name was Heath. And I'll never forget this. I walked in on a Saturday. Now, I'm talking to him, and he's at the counter. He goes, D, look behind you. And I turn around, I look, it's Eric Johnson. How he was in the Rhode Island Daddy's Junkie Music is a mystery to me. It was him. And he says to me, he's checking the chords. He's been here for 2 hours. He brought in his 56 Strat, and he's been like this, listening, playing the whole time. Because he can hear the difference in the cables. So you can't tell me there's no difference in wood. If he can hear a difference in a cable, there's definitely a difference in natural tone wood.
It's I think it's like I got guitars that aren't even made out of wood, and they sound different.
They are.
I got that mule over my shoulder there.
Yeah,
that's mostly steel. Yeah, like it's a steel body and it's got a wood neck, but like it's mostly steel. And then even those materials actually, as much as we'd like to believe that they're all the same when it becomes a man-made material like that, why is my Ampeg Dan Armstrong, which is, the clear guitar, why is mine only 9.8 pounds when all the other ones that I've played have been like 12? Like,
right.
The hardware is the same. Everything else is the same. Why is mine lighter and I think sounds better than most of the other ones I've ever played? Even those materials can vary a little bit.
So here's the, not to change direction on this, but it does matter because it seems like for every year that goes by, we in this industry, we create this monster, right? We've been given everything we want, and everyone seems to think that we can produce a 6-pound guitar every single time.
Right.
And this is the problem and if you're a musician that gigs, I get it. You're doing 3-4 hours in a night and you don't want a heavy guitar. Totally understand. But the lion's share of people are not doing that. And unfortunately, there's a stereotype and it puts a lot of pressure on guys like me and builders, more importantly, builders, that they've got to come up with ultra lightweight and it's got to sound good and it's got to look good. And it's like, at some point, folks, we have little control over certain things. I would start with tone, sound, and I will tell you, lightweight doesn't mean better sounding, or vice versa.
Right. Totally.
It's in the piece of wood, and I wish I could relay that better to people. Um, my grandfather worked for Polaroid Corporation back in their heyday, and he used to have this sign. It was in his office above his desk. It was quality, service, and price. Pick any two.
Yep.
And it's the truth. You just
It is. Yeah.
we want to give you everything, but we're going out of business if we can do it, and it happens a lot with me too. I know it's not intentional, but people will ask me, all of a sudden it's 15 must-haves, and I just nicely say, this could take me 3 days to find, right? This is
Mhm.
$100 item. I'll be out of business.
Right. Exactly.
And no matter how nice you are to people, they get upset, and some people, cool, they get it. But it's just, I told my wife I was coming home for dinner tonight, and so that's just the moral of the story is, I would encourage builders, I would encourage buyers to understand that a lot of this stuff is not perfect, and especially the wood aspect, not perfect at all. And we know you're spending good hard-earned money. We understand that, but we don't we don't make the wood. We don't control that. So have a little flexibility with us suppliers and builders. We do the best we can under the circumstances.
Mm-hmm. It's funny that your grandpa had that sign. My grandpa was an upholsterer, and he had a very similar sign. It was just a slight variation. It was like, you can have it good, fast, or cheap. Pick any two.
Yeah, but it's so true, because the person offering all three is going out of business, if not out of business already.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, who doesn't want to give everything they want? But people, let's just be honest, we're all needy in some way or shape or form as human beings. So somewhere in there's balance, right? We got to run a business, and we got to keep people happy. Somewhere in there's balance.
100%. Well, I want to segue still into the wood talk, because we were originally going to do this up in Washington under very different circumstances, which hopefully we still get to do that content, one of these days when you're back out here. But in the meantime, you have discovered something that, as far as I know, has never been discussed before in this whole wood world, and it revolves around the quilted maple. Right? What are we talking about? What is this discovery that you have come up with?
Sure. Yeah. So the number one highly prized figured maple in the world is big leaf or Pacific Northwest Coast maple. It's also one of the smallest growing regions that wood only comes from. So it would be coastal Oregon, coastal Washington, Olympic Peninsula, for those that are familiar with it, and then absolute Southwest British Columbia. And it's highly prized. It's from people here in America. It makes for amazing instruments. And then obviously veneer companies overseas and guitar companies. But for my memory serves me correctly, I think the first high figured quilted maple instrument was in the year I was born, 1980. The wood obviously has existed for thousands of years. But it was primarily used for toilet paper and paper towels, being pulped, and which is a sin. But you don't know what you don't know at the time, right? So along comes this guy, and I cannot remember his name. I always forget. He actually just passed away, I think, a couple of years ago, and he made the guitar, and that was it. Once people got their eyes on this thing, we have not taken our foot off the gas pedal. Mm-hmm. The demand is just insane.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like PRS basically made it popular, or at least that was most people's first exposure to it.
Yeah,
I think.
For sure. Paul Reed Smith, Tom Anderson was one of them.
Yep.
And then the big guys, Fender and Gibson, got into it, and that was it. It became mainstream. And so the part that people don't realize is, remember, this comes from a small geographical area, and it was never more available than it was in 1985.
Right.
It's become less and less available. While
demand has gone up.
Grown.
Yep.
And it's crazy. I live in that world, so I've learned a lot of things. But what we know so far has really been the same. Because we always get asked, what causes this figure pattern? That's a great question. Figure is grown, happens, number one, genetics. when a tree has genetic figure, it tends to be more prevalent, goes deeper through the tree and further up the tree. Compression, which means literally that you have a tree that has a trunk, a section, an arm,
Well,
a limb.
one second here. Sorry. I've
Yeah.
got a giant spider crawling on my desk.
Ooh.
Hello there. I'd like to introduce you to your new best friend, the Chase Bliss Audio Lossy. Lossy is a collaboration between Chase Bliss and Goodhertz. And it's meant to give you some control over those weird digital artifacts that come with very compressed audio. You're hearing it right now. All the changes that are taking place are strictly coming from my playing dynamics. I'm just interacting with the pedal and letting it do its thing. In some true stereo goodness. If you'd like some more details about Lossy, I'd invite you to head over to chaseblissaudio.com. I think you're going to like what you find.
Hey, this is Dewey Halpus, host of Peer Pleasure on the Sound Talent Media Podcast Network. Join me each week as I explore another long-form conversation with one of your favorite musicians, actors, comedians, or creatives. From Chino Moreno of the Deftones, John Gorley of Portugal the Man, to Fat Mike from NoFX and Ian MacKaye from Fugazi and Minor Threat, we go all over the map. From Fall Out Boy to Slayer, Peer Pleasure has it all. Check us out now on Sound Talent Media.
Welcome to us talking about our podcast for a minute.
What's the name of that podcast?
That's Axe to Grind, and right now you're going to be getting a little taste of it, right down to the shaky microphone and all.
And my name's Bob.
And my name's Patrick, and usually we're joined by Tom.
Tom's the best. Tom has a real grown-up job that requires him to be at work, but we talk about decidedly not so grown-up things like
hardcore music and things that people that like hardcore music tend to like.
So that could be the latest shows, revisiting classic material, talking about the new classics, all the little dorm room nonsense that you imagine from niche music podcasts that you either love, want to love, or hate.
Yeah, imagine all the emotions that you have towards a genre that has impacted your life, and then condense them down to an hour to 2 hours a week.
So triangulate your speakers, think about jumping off the bed, singing along, dancing like an idiot, and listen to Axe to Grind podcast.
And he happens to be right on my mouse.
Ooh.
Sorry, buddy.
At least you saw him and you didn't reach for it.
Yeah. All right. This has happened before on the podcast because this is literally recorded in my shed in my backyard.
Right.
First time I've actually been able to get him, though.
There you go. Nice.
Okay, so the things that make it happen. Sorry about that.
So for the last 45 years, what we understand about quilted maple is that number one is genetics, but that's a loaded term. I've personally been out to the West Coast in Washington State. We'll find a patch of trees and we find the parent tree loaded with figure, and in that surrounding area, we know that those are saplings from that parent tree, and two will have figure, none the others won't. So it's like, okay, what causes that? And then we go into an area where the parent tree has no figure, but the saplings do. So genetics is still a very broad, vague category, but we know it plays a role.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, I think Pacific Rim TONEWOODs is doing a 100 maple, I forget what they call it, 100 maples program. They're looking more into the curly maple aspect. I'm more intrigued with quilt because it's so radical. And but anyway, so genetics and compression is when you have a limb, it's crushing. On tree, you always have a compression and a tension side. The compression, literally, think of compression as crushing. So when you crush the wood's grain, you get a disruption of the wood grain in turn called figure, but it's isolated, it's small. We know weather conditions, so wind, rain, soil conditions. We know this all, drought. We know too much rain, not enough rain. These all play roles. But since that was discovered and determined a while ago, not much has changed. There's still an aspect of it we don't understand. So I had gone out and met a landowner months ago, and when I went and scouted his land, for your viewers so they understand, it's not uncommon to scout a piece of property, look at 50, 60 trees, and find absolutely no figure. It's usually very labor intensive, and it's not very rewarding. Honestly, that's what it is. I've literally spent days and going, okay, I'm going to get on a plane and go home now. It's just, that happens. So when I meet this guy, he has a very unique parcel of land. It's basically in the foothills leading up to the mountains, and it peaks at about 2,500 feet in elevation. I was floored because 1 in every 3 trees had some type of quilting pattern in it. And I was like, wow. I've never seen this. This is very intriguing. So I said to him, and he's a land clearer by trade. So that's the guy you want to ask, because he's moving earth and soil and trees, and he's cutting and doing all that. So if he's going to see something out of the ordinary, that's the guy that's going to see it. And I asked him, his name's Justin. I said, Justice, what do you think the cause is? And he said, he goes, I'm not totally sure. He goes, but I think it has something to do with the soil. And I said, the soil? Huh? I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, he goes, for some reason, he goes, in this area, we have a particular clay. He goes, that's all I know. He goes, but I don't find that everywhere else. I'm like, okay, cool. We do the deal. We get the logs. The wood's great and all that. Leave. Now I come back again months later, do another load. The first day I am out there. Now, for the viewers, and I'm kind of repeating myself from my original video, in Washington, particularly in the Olympic Peninsula, it rains a tremendous amount. And about 10 months out of the year, it's pretty wet. Like, you can't do a lot of this stuff, and you get your equipment stuck in there. But in July and August, you get a reprieve if it's a good year. And I went out at the very beginning of August, and it was very dry, warm, dry. And all that runoff exposed this clay as we were going up into this ravine valley. And I didn't even catch it. He did, because now it's on his mind. He's looking. He looks down. He's like, D, look at this. And I looked down. And it took me about 5 seconds to realize that I wasn't dreaming. And I'm looking at clay that is perfectly quilted like the wood I sell.
Weird.
Except there's no tree in sight. Dude, I don't have an answer. It's the first time I've ever seen anything like this in my life. And I can't make sense of it. I know what I'm seeing. And I'm like, this is new. This is this is telling us something that we don't know. How is this possible? The trees all in that valley, every single one of them had high-grade quilted figure.
That's crazy.
Every single one.
How many trees are we talking?
Well, that we cut down, because it's selective. We don't just plow trees down.
Sure. You try to guess, right?
No, but there are people that do that. We don't do that. So
yeah,
we took nine trees out in a selected area, every single one. And
That's
there were
crazy.
others that had more, but we decided no. It's just, and the part that people need to understand too, and just a side note, because a lot of people think we just go in and pillage land. We don't do that. With big leaf maple out in the Olympic Peninsula, it's basically almost like a weed. If you cut one tree in that forest and open up that canopy and the sunlight hits the floor,
another one's coming. Yeah.
Five grow in that one's place. And they grow from mini sapling to 100-foot tree in 40 to 50 years.
Crazy.
So for all those naysayers and people think that we're evil, and no. It's not. What we do does not even register when it comes to land clearing and stuff like that. So anyways, back to the clay. I have an update. I don't think it's the clay that causes the quilting, and I don't think it's the trees that cause the clay to quilt. I think it's frequency. I think it lies on the Cascadia Fault or close to.
Okay.
Nowhere else. So that goes all the way down to the San Andreas. But the weather conditions are not conducive for those trees to grow. Hot, dry, desert. Nope. Not until you get into Northern California, Oregon, and Washington, where you start to see that forest wet climate. And it's relatively close to Cascade. So that being said, it makes sense. I started looking at seismatics, which is whenever you see that video where they put sand on this vibrating plate and then they change the frequency, what happens? It changes shapes. It has to be frequency. But we're going to send that all out to be tested. And I brought it back here in the East because I didn't want any bias. But we're going to send it out here, and then we're gonna go check out the fault and the frequencies because I'm leaning more towards that because I don't have any other explanation. But we want to take the scientific method where we cross all our T's, dot all our I's, and say, okay, listen, we need to get the clay tested, make sure I'm not missing anything. Like this doesn't have 100 parts more sulfur in it than, that causes the quote, so we don't miss anything. But in the world of figured wood, this is a big discovery because prior to that, it was just finger pointing and guessing, and it had been stale for 40 years.
It's interesting to think that it's hypothetically possible. I mean, already you've sort of isolated a very specific area where, normally you're hunting for this stuff, right? You're going out and looking for it. If it becomes that common in this area, it's hypothetically possible that you could start seeding it, right? Like you could start actually planning your harvest out a little bit more.
Yeah, farms. You can farm it. Yeah, absolutely. That's plantation. So I think, well, of course, this is me just speaking out loud. There's still some genetic aspects, but if there's a particular, so what would have to happen is you'd have to set up sensors all in an area where this stuff grows, and in an area not far away where it isn't as prevalent. You want to measure frequencies and the consistency or inconsistency of those frequencies. That's the science we need, and frequency can be changed. You can add, you know what I mean? So this is something that man can manipulate. Of course, we do a really good job at that as human beings. We can manipulate soils and growing conditions. It's no different than we do hybrid planting. I mean, I just said earlier, there's 133 maples in America. 13 of them are original. The rest are all imported or hybrids. So we've been doing crazy stuff like this for years. Walnuts, grafting walnut trees, and it's just crazy.
Yeah.
So that would be great because poaching is a real issue, and I won't take too much time on this topic, but it's something that needs to be talked about because the instrument world gets bad press when it comes to quilted maple and poaching. For sure, there's a methamphetamine problem and there's a poaching problem. There's no question about it. But however, the media likes to focus on the handful of incidents where that's not the case with everything that goes out. So I wanted to clear the air on that. It's the process to acquire this wood legally is very difficult. Okay. And so if you're not a company like Kimball Hardwoods who has vast resources, connections, and the funds to do this, they make it very challenging for John Q. Citizen who lives out in the area. Listen, the bylaws are insane. They basically encourage theft, I guess, for a lack of a better term,
because they make it so hard.
It's to the point where people are like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this. And then on top of it, there's also issues in certain counties, which will, remain nameless, where the sheriff's office is also involved in some less than honorable dealings. So this is not just, some guy on meth. It's ingrained in the local culture. And there's bad actors. Anywhere where there's money to be made, there's always some shenanigans, taking place.
Of course.
But we buy it. Everything's permitted. We go direct with the landowners. We a lot of times we'll cut the wood ourselves or help. And that's how we do it. But there's a lot of people, if I had to take a guess, maybe 30% or more of the wood is not permitted. So technically it's stolen, but that's not true. It's not like, you went to your neighbor's property and cut it down. It just means you didn't pull permits.
Right.
But you could have cut it on your own land. So, but that stuff, the problem with the unpermitted or even stolen wood is it makes it on the platforms like eBay and Etsy and Reverb and all these places. And so there's very little cost involved in cutting a tree down as long as you know someone who can sell it online. So what that does is that drive the demand's through the roof, and it drives the cost of the product down. It's unrealistic. So it hurts guys like me or companies like Kimball Hardwoods who are paying. I'm paying full everything, you name it. Paying for bulldozers, I'm paying for flights, hotels, I'm paying for you name it. There's not much I'm not paying for to get this wood back. The risk is enormous, and the cost is much greater than someone who lives out there local and finds a tree, cuts it down, and doesn't pull permits. There's not much I can do about that, but I can tell you we do it the right way. We have a kiln here. We can certify the wood, and we have a great relationship with the USDA. So if you buy from us, we do it the right way.
And that is not even something that like fully crosses most players' mind, is the fact that some of this wood can be illegally harvested and used for these various purposes. That's not really something that we think about as players a whole lot, I don't think. I mean, it probably didn't enter into most of our minds until the government was cracking down on Gibson here. What was that, 5-6 years ago? Which turns out wasn't even their fault necessarily.
Well, again, that can happen to honest people. You have to be very careful. Listen, when I go to land, we do GPS coordinates. I have to be 100% sure that this is their land.
Oh, right.
If I take heavy equipment on someone else's land just because somebody told me it was theirs, you don't even want to be a part of that. That litigation is ugly. You don't want any part of that. Plus, then you have the feds. Feds will come in my door, probably take half my wood and say, "Hey, we'll check it out and let you know." You never get it back.
Of course.
I'm not. Nope. I've become too smart, too old, and I'm figuring out how not to do things. I'm like, nope, not making those mistakes.
I mean, it's amazing that, like, I mean, I know it sounds ridiculous and it sounds silly, but a lot of my friends are in the pedal world, and the amount of people, and some people will do this, but the amount of people that live, say, in Canada or Europe or something, then you're shipping them something rather expensive, and they're like, "Hey, can you mark this as a gift?"
Yeah.
we
get that all the time, man.
And it's like, well, am I giving it to you? No, I'm selling it to you. And I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I know I don't want to pay taxes any more than anybody else does, but you got to take that up with your government, man. Like,
so I'll touch on that briefly, not to single out countries, but listen, America is a great place to live. I hope people understand and appreciate this, because in most countries, the VAT tax and tariff is exceptionally high.
Oh, yeah.
In some countries, it's 50 to 75% of goods. And basically, they're discouraging their citizens from purchasing elsewhere. But if you're in the guitar, TONEWOOD world and all that, some of that stuff comes from the great old USA, and you can't get it from someone else unless they're importing containers. And by default, we get people in other countries, I mean, all the time. Hey, can you, it's $1,000 order. Hey, can you write $50? I'm like, well, first of all, the shipping was $200. And
Right.
even if I was willing to do that, and I'm not, that's a major red flag. I mean, think about that. Or samples. Whoa, dude, we're a corporation. We can't sample anything. That's called like favors and bribes. We can't do that stuff. And then I'll get, well, so and so does it.
That's so and so. Yeah, that's their risk.
Their business. We don't do that, and it's unfortunate. And ultimately, it's their choice. And yeah, sure, we've lost some opportunity, but I sleep good at night. We're not aiding and abetting defrauding governments. Listen, we have enough legitimate stresses in our life. We don't need any of that. So
no, it's and I understand the perspective. Like, I get it. I'm not even being like, how dare you ask? But at the same time, you got to think about what you're actually asking for.
Yeah. You're shocked how much we get asked. It's like, wow, okay, I know where we're going. As soon as I know where we're going with that conversation. I'm like, nope, we don't do it.
Yeah, it's just like, no. Well, because then the thing is, then it jeopardizes your, are you probably going to get, extradited to wherever and stand in front of the, probably not, but are you will it limit your ability to do business in that country ever again? Yep.
Yeah.
So,
for sure. Yep.
Yeah. The answer is no.
It was for a long time, from what I understand, before my time, it was fairly common practice in the wood parts industry. And I'm sure there are those that still do it. But I made a decision early on. I was like, no, I don't think so.
Nope.
I think we're good.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
anyways.
Well, let's see. We have approached. We're actually right at the hour mark here, and
Perfect.
I've got the couple classic questions I like to wrap these up with. I ask everybody these questions, but before I do, I like to give the guests a chance to take the stage. You know, you're talking to a few thousand people right now. You can plug anything you want to plug. You can shout out anybody you want to shout out. You know, say hi to your aunt. Whatever you want to do. The floor is yours.
Oh, the floor is mine?
Yep.
Oh, I don't put me on the spot. No, just I just love the opportunity for I guess what I want people to know is it's not always about the money.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need it to survive? For sure. There's no question. Part of what drives me is the ability to help educate. The more people I reach, the more people I can educate. Honestly, that's half of it for me. One of the main reasons I got into this in the first place is I realized there was a major lack of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
There are people that were just, whether they're being misled and not getting the right information, either deliberate or accidentally. But I want to keep this alive in the natural figured wood world, TONEWOOD world. It seems like the younger generations aren't engaging as much. And so I feel it's a responsibility being at the tail end of the Generation X generation is that we have to pass that knowledge on. And I get a lot of heat for this from my contemporaries. Like people, oh, you're giving up trade secrets. And no, I'm not giving up too many trade secrets. I want people to become educated. I want people to get excited. I want people to pick up instruments. Whether they buy from me or anyone else, it doesn't matter. I want people, we need to pass this on because if not, it'll all be lost.
Mm-hmm.
So
100%.
And we need more people that are willing to do that. It seems like there's a shortage of people like yourself, like me, that actually care about people, and want to see this industry not only thrive but grow.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're now a convenience-based race, where people, it's becoming easy to not have to try hard. Unfortunately, I have to say it. And what we're asking people to do is maybe get a little bit more involved than they probably would like. But I can assure people that if you make the effort, you might spark a passion you didn't realize you had.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really important that people, I think, at least try. And I'm a figured wood guy. So if you guys don't know anything about figured wood, I urge you all you can check our company out, KimballHardwoods.com. And we've got a YouTube channel. We've got Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. And I do educational videos. So if you guys want to take this further and want to know more, we have all that stuff right on our website. Scroll down. We have the YouTube videos and all that. So if not for anything, at least give yourself a free education.
So for the listeners, wherever the words are, wherever you're listening to this, the show notes, the description on YouTube, whatever, the link to his website will be down there. So you can just click it and it's easy to find. There you go. And you can get all that stuff. All right. Final questions. First one. What is your favorite Boss pedal?
Oh, I'm just a regular distortion. What was the distortion? There was a few different ones. It wasn't insane. Oh God, it's been so long.
DS1, orange one?
No, it was black. It was black.
Black. So it would have been like
it had you had the knob on the side. So you had your stomp box and you had the knob on the side, which would allow you to gain it even higher. What the heck was that one?
Oh
God.
I can't remember. I've seen a lot of modded Boss pedals.
This is 25 years ago. So this is not when they first came out, but it wasn't long after. What the heck was that one? Not super distortion. I don't know. I call it super distortion, but I don't think it was. It was like insane distortion.
Was it a metal zone or an HM2 maybe?
It was a metal zone.
Metal zone? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
And it had a knob where you could tweak it even more. I forgot it. It's at least 25 years ago.
Yeah, they got the concentric pots on those. So they got the outside knob and the inside knob. and so you can adjust different levels of the EQ, and it gets a gnarly rap. But that pedal's actually insanely cool. If you know,
it is cool. I found that if you weren't careful, it caused you to feedback pretty quick.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. I've actually got a murdered out one right here.
Cool.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Final question. What is your favorite kind of pizza?
Oh, well, I'm in the Northeast. We have some pretty good pizza.
You do?
I'm a meat and potatoes guy. I love meat lovers. Destroys my stomach, but I love it. You know, that's sausage, pepperoni, bacon. I'm not a hot capicola guy.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to sound weird. It tastes like wet dog smells. It's weird.
I like it. Maybe I like wet dogs. I don't know.
I don't know. Well, yeah. Well, remember, I spent most of my life in food service, so I ate more Italian grinders. I mean, we were doing cheesecake bites at 9 a.m. for 20 years, you know? But no, so that's the type, but the style, Neapolitan style pizza.
Yeah, like a good old Italian classic style.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have them all here. Anyway, from the fried crust to the thin crust to the brick oven it's pretty cool. This is kind of not where it first began, but it was shortly thereafter, quite a bit.
Yeah, I love that style of pizza. It was a place in town here that opened up like 15 years ago and introduced it to me. At that point, I was thinking pizza's pizza. And
no.
I was
There's a big difference.
I was so wrong, and I've become so nerdy about it since that place opened.
It's like it took us to leave, me and my wife, and go somewhere else to realize how good we have it.
Oh yeah, you guys have it.
Oh, this
really
is
good.
Pizza? No, this is not pizza.
No.
Yeah. So
we're actually making
coincidentally, I got sick on pizza and took my family to the Bahamas last year.
No, you got sick on pizza?
Oh yeah, I got deathly ill. I was I stayed at the Atlanta. Well, I shouldn't say the name. I don't want to give them any bad PR. But anyways, I stayed at a very well-known resort, and everyone was raving about this pizza place. But it was funny. The New Yorkers were all complaining, and I'm like, and I was like, all right, fine. And I had a pepperoni, and it didn't taste right. It had a weird, funny taste to it. Oh man! And I was the only one that ate the pepperoni. Everyone else in my family was fine, dude. I'll spare everyone the details.
There was something.
So we have good pizza in the Northeast, and I'll leave that there.
There was I've told this story before, and they're out of business. But there was a pizza place that was at the time the only place that would deliver to my workplace, and I wasn't allowed to leave my workplace once I got there because of the type of job it was. So sometimes when you needed food in the middle of the night, or at the end of the day, it was like
it's the only place.
It's the only place, and it was horrible. And it wasn't just because I have bad memories and no, that place sucked. And I got to the point where I'd order their pizza, shave all the toppings off the top, throw the crust in the garbage can, and just eat the sausage and stuff because the crust was awful. It was so bad. So not all pizza is created equal. I'm sorry. It's not.
No. We went into full. We used to do. I did business with Johnson Wales University back in my food service days, and let me tell you something. When they dissected stuff, it was like not everything is created equal. It's amazing what goes into. Yeah, I mean, the difference between putting out a good product and a cheap product is like exponentially more expensive. Plus, there's a secret recipe aspect of it that nobody wants to share with you. So it really is. I mean, there's places here in the state of Rhode Island where I'm at have won best pizza in the state, have had sauce recipes under lock and key for 60 years.
I believe it. Yeah.
And third generation later, and there are still family members that do not know.
Wow. Well, even family members don't know.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh no, only a few.
Mm-hmm.
Next of kin.
Wow.
Yep.
I gotta get up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've never been to Rhode Island. I need to fix that.
Yeah, small but mighty little state. Over 1 million people. Maybe a little standoffish, but they're good people. You get stuck on a side of the road, something happens, don't worry, they'll go to war with you.
All right. Nice.
They'll tell you how they feel, but they'll help you.
Right. I like that. Yeah. I like that a lot. All right, Derek. Well, you want to slide over to Patreon, see what kind of shenanigans we can get into over there?
Sure.
All right. For Derek, this is Blake, and as always, folks, good luck and good tones. All right, good people, there you have it. There's another episode in the can. I hope you enjoyed that chat as much as I did. Derek is a great guy, and I really look forward to learning even more about him. And you should look forward to the Patreon episode because, well, we get into some pretty strange territory as we so often do on those episodes. And if you'd really, really like to support the show, that is a fantastic way to do it. You can get a bunch of ad-free episodes, you can get a bunch of content, you can get a bunch of stuff, and it's been $5 for years, and it still is. So if you want to help out the show, go over there. That's the place to do it. Thank you so much to everybody that's doing that. It is immensely helpful. And if you really enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. Share it with somebody you think would be into it. Please, please, please. I know I ask for that every single episode, but it really is the lifeblood of this podcast. So thank you so much to everybody that's done that. Thank you again to Derek for coming on. Make sure you check out his business if you're in the business of making stuff. And until next time, folks, I'll talk to you on the internet very soon. Thank you. One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.
Hey, this is Steve Choi, host of the Musicians Guild podcast, part of the Sound Talent Media podcast network. Within the 4 walls of the Musicians Guild, we'll be discussing the habits, idiosyncrasies, experiences, and general psychology of my friends and peers, all involved with music in various capacities. Listen and subscribe at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hello out there! Hi, I'm Hal Schwartz.
And I'm Flynn McLean. We want to tell you about our podcast, None But the Brave, which is dedicated to taking a deep dive into the work of Bruce Springsteen.
We're currently in our 5th season. Our latest episodes focus heavily on Bruce's 2024 tour and have featured such guests as Anthony Castrovince from MLB Network and Barstool's Kirk Minahan.
We're also covering the 40th anniversary of Bruce's biggest record, Born in the USA. And as part of that, coming up this week, Uprock's cultural critic Stephen Hyden returns to the show for a fascinating hour-long conversation about his new book, There Was Nothing You Could Do, Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA and the End of the Heartland.
To listen, you can go to our website, mbtbpodcast.com, or subscribe on your preferred podcasting platform.
We hope to see you further on up the road.
Thank you so much. We'll be seeing